It's funny how the new college football playoff world has lent itself to giving ammunition to different narratives. And one narrative that's a tale of old time is that there's SEC bias, that somehow, whether it be folks with a microphone or folks that run the college football playoff, they somehow, some way just like favor the SEC. And now as we see just kind of chaos across the college football world, they're saying, oh, see? Hey, look, Texas lost to Georgia, Kentucky played Georgia close, and Kentucky got beat by Florida, so they actually must not even be that good of a conference. Hey, Bama lost to Vandy, so actually, look, the SEC's overrated. We've been saying it for a long time now. There's your proof in the pudding. And while I see where you're coming from, and I don't think that the things you're saying are all the way untrue in terms of recounting the events that happened, we gotta circle up here and have a conversation about this SEC bias. We gotta address this SEC slander. College football sickos, make sure you're dialed in here to the hard count right here on the On3 YouTube channel. The best way to do that, making sure you are subscribed. We appreciate you in advance for being dialed in. So let's start here though, because I think the first thing, or a lot of things I've seen in my own comment section is this guy, man, Bama homer, SEC bias guy. First of all, grew up in California, went to school in the Northeast, lived in Waco, Texas, which is the essentially like Big 12 country. Like if you're saying I'm a homer, I think you could probably point to the West Coast first, could also probably point to the Big 12. We're in Nashville right now, which is not that far from Big 10 country. Like if you're trying to have a discussion around my own bias, I think it's going to be kind of hard to pin that down. Like I've just sort of lived all over the place, so that's sort of your own hill to die on. God bless you. But going back to what I said, the transitive property, it's not a thing in college football. And I understand that the thought behind it of, well, this team lost to that team. Like I said, Georgia beat Texas. Georgia was played close by Kentucky. It was down to a point. And then Kentucky got body bagged by Florida, and Florida's not that good, so therefore Georgia must not be that good. And they beat Texas, so therefore the conference, if that's your creme de la creme, they must not be that good. Transitive property in college football, it doesn't work like that. Like if you were to take that same set of logic and apply it elsewhere across the college football landscape, nobody would be good. Like we'll talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame beat Louisville. Notre Dame lost to NIU. So Notre Dame actually isn't that good per your logic. So therefore them beating one of the teams that pushed Miami last week down to a touchdown, Miami was one of the best teams in the ACC. Therefore, the ACC must not be all that good. And if you have an anti-ACC agenda during this conversation, like, I'm not validating that. My point being, this is the most volatile sport on the face of the planet, and we are smack dab in the middle of the most volatile scheduling we've ever had across the entire existence of the sport. Like, that's one of the things that we talked about last week was the chaos within the SEC, the chaos within college football. Yes, some of it is due to the portal. We'll talk about that in a second. I think more than anything, you point to the conference realignment. Like seeing Georgia play Bama, and Bama's a whole other conversation, but seeing them go to Tuscaloosa and then play Texas, like overall, we've never seen Georgia have to run that kind of gauntlet during the regular season. And if you have an issue with what their schedule used to be, I mean, we can have a conversation about that another time. But the point remains the same. We haven't seen these impactful games happen at this point in the year in a long, long time. So therefore, seeing Georgia catch a loss to Alabama or seeing Texas catch a loss to Georgia when they were supposed to be the best team in America, at that point you're like, whoa, hey, what's our reference point? It's discombobulating. And really it shouldn't be that surprising. Like Ohio State, Oregon, same deal. We haven't seen Ohio State be tested before the month of November in a long time, really. Right? Like, I mean, obviously there's one-offs here and there, but for the most part, Ohio State typically runs the table until they get to Michigan. They lose to Oregon. Whoa, hey, is the Big Ten not actually that good? No, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying here is these are actually better stress tests earlier in the year that we've never had before. And so the previous logic is, well, since they usually would win to this point in the year, with them losing earlier than we are accustomed to, they must not actually be what we thought they were. And I think that's just quite frankly nonsense. Now, the other thing is people are saying, well, look at the little guys in the SEC, going back to this SEC conversation. People saying, well, Vanderbilt beat Alabama. We've said this before. Bama, I think this year, I'm still not 100% sure what they are. I don't think any of us are. But I do think you point to, okay, first-year head coach, replacing 66% production on defense, there's some things you can point to and say, okay, Bama is in a different spot than they've been over the course of the last 15 plus years. A guy named Nick Saban retired. So that is what it is. But to point to the other teams like Vandy, we just mentioned, Vandy's not the same Vandy they were last year. Vandy's not the preseason win total of like 2.5 over-under that they were going into the season. They got Diego Pavia. And who knew what he was going to be when he got to Vandy, but it's not just him. They took 20-plus transfers at Vandy. That's flipping a roster more or less. That's at least flipping your starters. It's a different outfit. Same thing with Arkansas. Well, hey, Arkansas, you want to talk about Tennessee being a playoff team. Tennessee came to Fayetteville and got that action. Took an L. Well, Arkansas also isn't the same team they were last year. Arkansas added 20 transfers themselves and a quarterback in Taylor Green. I mean, so talk about A&M. They added 27 transfers, give or take. Like, they're a different outfit. Got a new head coach. So what I'm trying to say here is the portal, as much as it's, creating parity across the landscape, I think we need to hone in on the idea that some of these teams that are maybe not like tier 1 in the SEC, the pitch they're able to make to a lot of these different guys in the portal is, hey, one, come here. You can have some playing time. Like, that's always appealing to anybody in the portal. The other part of this is if you come play in the SEC, what's the thing that most guys in the portal are looking for? NIL, sure. NFL development. Chance to improve their draft stock. Playing in the best conference, for the most part, over the course of the last however many years in college football, that improves your draft stock. And so what I'm trying to say here is schools like Vandy, schools like Arkansas, schools like A&M, in addition to whatever they can do on the NIL front, they can pitch the idea that you can help yourself professionally, which is your ultimate goal, by coming and playing here. And so that's, I think, overall helping them load up their rosters to be more competitive with the Tennessees, the Bamas, the Georgias, the LSUs, so on and so forth. Last thing I'll say here, this is kind of the mic drop moment when you talk about the SEC. This is kind of why I've always thought the SEC bias conversation is a little bit ridiculous. If the SEC bias was real, let's just say it's a real thing. It's some elaborate ruse. The whole college football media space is in on it, even though half of them went to Syracuse, whatever. If they're all in on it, the NFL is in on it too. NFL scouts who are putting food on the table by finding the best talent in the college football world that feed their families that way. They are in on the SEC bias because the NFL draft year after year points to, hey, there's really freaking good players in the SEC. So the whole SEC slander with the bias is real because, look, the SEC is kind of down this year. If you want to say that, you can say that. I think college football is just chaotic this year. College football is the most volatile sport in the world with 18 to 22-year-olds deciding what happens on any given Saturday. Like, I think maybe we should take a step back and maybe think twice before we're so free with that take. Just my 2 cents. The Hard Count brought to you by our friends over at Huel. Now, Huel, I keep telling you all this, man. It has been a go-to for me since we partnered with them. They do phenomenal work. Like, I know a lot of y'all got a lot going on. Work, whether you're doing school, whether you're doing carpool, like you can't always just go back home and make a quick meal. Huel has got a ton of nutrition within it, 35 grams of protein. You have all the calories you need. It essentially is like drinking a meal, and they're flavored great. I mean, this is chocolate. They got vanilla, which is phenomenal. Like, they have been a go-to for us around the office. Got a fridge stocked within the studio, actually, that is just packed to the gills with Huel. So the Hard Count is brought to you by our friends over at Huel. You go to Huel.com, 15% off with code HARDCOUNT. All right, so unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel, nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. So shout out to you, shout out to Huel, and shout out to you being your best self with Huel, all right? So we appreciate them.